I can't have you on the show without us talking about Princess Diana,
Oh, yeah.
because I know you worked with her
I did.
for several years.
For 4.5 years. And, this is pretty impossible to take this on board. But I spoke to her, I think, every day for that 4.5 years.
So she was conversing with her dad's spirit? She was conversing with...
Yeah, when I saw her, both her parents had passed. But she, I think everything that has been written and said about her, there's very few things that aren't true. I mean, for instance, she wasn't pregnant when she died, and she wasn't going to marry Dodi. That would never, ever have happened. She loved her husband very, very much. She loved who is now our king, and he loved her, but he is from a family and an institution where you marry and you have a mistress.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Sally Morgan on the show with us today. You guys are going to love her. She's a celebrity psychic to the stars in the UK, is an author and TV personality. She's been called one of the top 5 psychics in the world, and she founded an online psychic hotline. I'm going to be asking Sally about being the late Princess Diana's psychic, how she connects to spirits, and for examples of some of the most extraordinary messages she's received from heaven. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go chat with Sally. Sally, I'm so thrilled you could join us today. Thank you for making the time for us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Anytime.
Were you psychic as a kid, or did you just learn how to communicate with spirit?
No, I was very, very psychic as a child. I lived, I was brought up in a house. My grandfather owned this big house in London, in, you could call it a suburb of London called Fulham. And in the 30s, 40s and 50s, it was a very poor area. And he bought this huge house that he never lived in. My parents lived in it. And that's where I grew up. And it was a house that was incredibly haunted. It was Edwardian. And it was very, very haunted. And my mother, she's only 16 years older than me. So by telling you that, she was out at work. So her main job was basically to keep myself and my sister fed, clothed, and, whatever. That was her main job. So she never really interacted with me. I used to tell her things were happening in the house. And I think that's what the beauty of it. She really dismissed it, which I think did me the biggest favor, because I think that if she hadn't, I may have felt I was encouraged. And I think that when you are encouraged, you can lose that spontaneity. Do you know what I mean? And so it was just there always. And it wasn't until I went to my high school that it was pointed out to me by the boys there, typical boys, that, I was saying things that were a bit odd. I mean, I'd always done it, but it was like, you've got brown eyes. You've always got brown eyes. It's only when someone says to you, haven't you got lovely brown eyes? Haven't you got lovely blue eyes? That you think, oh, I've got blue eyes. I've got brown eyes. And it was like that with this ability, this psychic ability.
So what did you see as a child?
Oh, everything in the house. Well, Well, I mean, for instance, it was this, if you imagine a brownstone house in New York, it is the equivalent of that in Fulham that I lived in. And we had the steps going up to the front door. And we used to play in the hallway, in the passageway. And we were what we were referred to as latchkey kids. Do you know what that is?
Sure.
And my dad would cycle home at lunchtime. Mum would be off in London working, and he would feed us. But, the rest of the day, and he'd go back to work. The rest of the day, it's mad when you think of it. We were just left to our own devices.
How old were you when you were left
Oh,
alone?
I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay. But how about when you were really little?
Oh, yeah. When I was really little, obviously, I say obviously, my grandmother, who really brought me up, because as I said, my mother was only 16 when I was born. So it was Well, she was 16 when she got pregnant, and she got married. Her birthday is the 28th of March, and she got married on the 30th of March when she was 17. So she was married to my father when I was born, but yeah, just by the skin of her teeth, you could say. So basically, my grandmother brought me up, and she, unfortunately, when I was 4, my grandma, she was only 41. She died of, yeah, she died of, well, we now call it sepsis, but
Oh,
it was, yeah,
no.
I know.
Oh,
She had a sore throat, and she got, we're talking about the late 40s, early 50s. They didn't have everything that you've got. And you didn't, well, we did have the National Health Service, but, people weren't used to using it. So anyway, she died, she passed over. And then my mother really struggled for us to, because I've got a sister it's only 11 months between us. She's 11 months younger than me. And she really struggled for us to be looked after. And we were like sent to different people in the street that we lived in because she had to work. So I think that the difficulties in my childhood, I know why am I, oh, woe is me, but I had a very, very difficult childhood and a very poor upbringing. And I think that there's no doubt about it that I think that's one of the reasons that I'm able to do this, because I lived in my own world.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I would see these things, and, as soon as mum came home, I'd say, oh, I saw this lady on the stairs, this particular incident. I saw, and her name was Miss Spooner, but I didn't know that until my mother said, oh, crumbs, that's Miss Spooner who died. I was pregnant with you. And she said, well, I heard a thud, and I came out the room, and she was upside down, because I said to her, we were playing schools. That's it. I was in the passageway playing schools with all the kids. They used to come in our house because our house was empty. Mum was out. So the children would all come in our house and we'd wreck it. Do you know what I mean? Every single day. And we were playing schools, and I walked past the stairs, and you've got the stairs, you've got the banister rails,
Sure.
and
Sure.
I looked, and I could see these little boots. They're about that big, tiny little black boots. And I thought, and they were like up there. And I went over to it, and I looked, and I thought, what, the black boot? I can still remember my head trying to take in what I was looking at. And I couldn't see her body, but then I saw her head. She was upside down. She'd fallen down the stairs, and her head was on the bottom step, and her legs were up here. But she was dressed like in a long skirt with little black ankle boots, because
Oh my
she was
gosh.
someone from the late 1800s, and
Sure.
she rented she must have lived there when my grandfather bought the house, because he bought it with sitting tenants, as we say, in it. And she'd come down, someone had rung her doorbell, and she'd come, and she tripped, and she broke her neck, and she died.
Oh, Lord.
Well,
Oh,
we
my.
were never ever told that story. And then, of course, my mother came home from work, and I went, oh, I saw some boots on the stairs. And she went, what do you mean? And she was like ignoring me. And I said, oh, you've got to come. I'm going to show you. They were little tiny baby boots, but she had tiny little feet. And as my mother, I'll never forget it, she came along the hall. She went, well, where did you see them? I said, oh, her head was there, and her feet were, and my mother, she went, what? And I remember looking at her, I said, what's the matter? And she said, oh my goodness me, you saw Miss Spooner. Her name was Mrs. Spooner, but she was only ever known as Miss Spooner. And I went, I just looked at my mother, and because she called my father, and she was saying, she didn't know that she said, she's about to have me. She said, and I can remember us just stating like that, saying, I was like this pregnant with you. And I heard a thud on the stairs, and I came out of my bedroom, and she was upside down on the stairs where she'd broken her neck.
Oh, heavens. So then did you ever talk about it again, or she
No,
just
not until
was.
I was a teenager, really.
Mhm.
Many, many things that happened were mentioned when they happened, because I wanted, my mum was, she was very beautiful. She looked like a film star, and she was like, just her whole life was her work with my mother. And so she she didn't really want to know, it was, she wanted to get home. My father would cook, and she'd eat, And then it was more about getting us bathed and ready for school, because we were like a little dolls. We were like dollies. She used to do our hair and dress us in these pretty little dresses. We were just really like, for show, really. But I would tell her things that had happened, and um, things that I'd seen, and things that had happened in the house. I mean, we had all the houses in those days, you had an outside lavatory, an outside bathroom, toilet, whatever you want to refer to it, WC, and we had one upstairs, one bathroom in the house, but we never used it because the people that rented the middle floor and the top floor, they used that bathroom. But if it was snowed or something like that, because you used to have a lot of snow then in the winter, we used to have to use the bathroom. And this particular winter, it'd been really snowing, and it was. They're really popular now. These light switches. They were like big brass light switches with a little toggle. They weren't like the light switches you have now. And I used to run up the stairs. We lived in the basement. So I'd run up the stairs and I'd open the basement door to the hall, and it was so frightening because it was pitch black, and I wanted to go to use the bathroom, and ran up the stairs, and I couldn't reach the light switch, so it stayed black, and I remember running up the stairs in the bathroom, putting the light on, and then thinking, oh, I've got to go downstairs. And as I ran downstairs, I thought I'll jump and put the light on. So I jumped up and my finger caught the toggle. The light went on. Went downstairs. We had a very, very strict father. It was the era. And he said, did you turn the light off in the hall? No, because you could hear it. It would go, because it was. And I said, well, no, I remember. And I thought, and he went, and he started to shout, yeah, turn the light, because of the money, the light, turn. Anyway, I ran upstairs and he was behind me. And I said, I can't reach the switch, I couldn't reach the switch. Blah, blah, blah. And as we walked down the hall, it turned off.
On its own. Who did that, Mrs. Spooner?
Well, since in my 50s, I decided to research the house, because I'll tell you something that happened to the house, which is so spooky, because it became a character in my life. It was number 13, Waldemar Avenue. And I used to say, we were just referred to as Waldemar, and in the family, you just referred to it. Oh, do you remember in Waldemar this? And it became a character. And of course, my father said, there's something wrong with that light switch. And I knew. And I said, it wasn't on when I went upstairs. And I jumped and put it on when I came down. And it was because he was behind me and he was angry. But I did the research on the house, and the original people that bought it in something like 1871 or something like that were three women and the father. They were three daughters, not the mother, and the father. So there was a spirit of, things happened in there that you just would, spooky, unbelievable.
Well, you can't say that, Sally, and not tell us another story.
Well,
That's too much of a tease.
Another story is, one day I must have been out with my mother. I was 14 years old. And the record players then, you plug them in. It was a little turntable,
Sure.
So they were like a little case, and you could carry them. They were like little
I had
little
one.
vanity case. Anyway, came home, and my bedroom was the first room. As you went in the front door, there was the hallway, because we lived in the basement, was our sitting room and the kitchen. But as you went in through the front door, the bedrooms were off of that first floor, really, the ground floor, you could say. And went into the bedroom, and I said, I had a Cliff Richard record. He was very and a singer called Helen Shapiro. She was so popular. So I said, I want to put my record on. And I remember my mum, she'd put some laundry on the end of my bed, and she started to put it away. And before I could plug the record player in, this voice, which now we would call EVP, it was a man's voice, but It was very monotone like that, and it filled the whole room, and he went, "Shut that bloody racket up." Racket, I don't know if you racket is noise, okay?
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
it's a really old term. And I went to my mum, "What?" And my mum looked at me, she went, "That's your father." And I said, That wasn't Dad's voice. I knew it wasn't my dad's voice. I did seriously, I was 14, but I knew it was like, and it was in my bedroom because I tell you other stories, if things had happened in there. So my mother then, she searches the whole, no one's in the house at all. Everyone's at work. It must have been about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, my father wasn't there. No one was in the garden. We had a little backyard. No one was in that. There was no one there. And my mother, she came back and she went, "You must never, ever tell anybody that happened."
Interesting. Why? What was she afraid of? That people would think you were nuts?
Well, because she'd have to back me up, wouldn't she? She'd heard it.
Yeah, nah, true,
As
true.
an adult now, one can
Right.
rationalize it and, but she would have had to have backed me. She was just terrified.
Well, the thing that's so fascinating to me is that this ability, I believe everybody has when they're born. It's just a matter of developing and enhancing it. It sounds like you do as well. But in your part of the world, certainly in Europe and other parts of the world, it's ancient. My God, the London Psychic Society and the London, spiritualist, whatever thing going on. It's been going on for forever.
Yeah, the thing is that when I remember I was 12 years old, and of course all these things are happening, not every day, but there would be an incident of some sort or another. I obviously was talking to my mother and saying things. I mean, I remember sitting on the outside loo, and I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden this woman, very large woman, that I'd never seen before, was in front of me. And for a split second, I can still remember thinking, "Oh, she must be a friend of Mummy's." That's the first thing. And I'm sitting on the loo, and my knickers are down by my ankles. I mean, I was a little girl. I must have been about 9, 8 or 9. And she was standing there like that, and she had this, I'll never forget, this apron on that came just above her ankles, and it wrapped around her. But like an opera singer would stay. She had hands up, and her, what was fascinating for me, because I was looking at her, and I knew she knew I could see her. We knew we could see one another, but I don't know how, but I knew that. And she didn't open her mouth, but she said to me, "Stand up and pull your knickers up." So I got up and I pulled my neck, and I thought, she just said that, but and I knew. So I just, I remember going freezing cold, running in, and my father was sitting in the sitting room, and he said, what's going on? What's going?" And I said, "Well, there's a lady in the garden." Because we lived just off the Fulham Road, and you could get to our house on the walls from, and I think he felt someone had got in, which would be quite easy to get in the gardens. And he ran, and he went, "There's no one there." And then my mother, who was in another part of the house, heard the commotion, because there must have been, like, I think I screamed or something. And I said, "Oh," she said, "What does she look like?" And I described her, and it was her grandmother.
Yeah. So did they ever believe you, do you think? Did your dad finally
Oh, I think, yeah,
start to believe you?
definitely. 101%. But they would never, ever, ever say.
Because you can't deny that stuff. You just can't make that up, especially as a little kid.
Well, and the thing is, I got, when I went to high school, because loads of things, lots and lots of incidences in my, you could say, we used to call it infant school, junior school, and preschool, lots of incidences. But when I went to high school, when it was pointed out to me on a daily basis, because I said something to a boy, and he was a bit of a bully. Now, as an adult, I can see you didn't. I don't think the word bully was ever used when I was at school. And in my head, I knew that his name wasn't his name. So he's with all his friends, and he's teasing a girl that I'm with. And I said to him, well, you know, you can't say that to her because your name, that isn't your name. And he went, his first name was Nigel. I remember that. Actually, I know his full name. I've remembered his surname. Maybe I shouldn't say it. But I said, that's not your name. And he said, uh, that's my name. That's my name. And I went, he went, bruh. And I said, oh, well, I know it is like, no. I really thought I was, clever. Anyway, the next thing I know, my mother, there must have been an incident. He goes home and says it. Basically, what had happened is he was, in those days, it was called illegitimate. So he his mother married a man that wasn't his father, and he had that man's name, but he knew that he didn't have that name. He had his mother's maiden name, and they were changing it. So he goes home and he says, there's a girl at school and she knows my real name. So I mean, if I can tell you, all hell broke loose. I mean, you would have thought I'd robbed the Bank of England. I was poor. The next student, and my mother was. So then my mother said, and I must have been 12. 'Cause you go to high school at 11 here, and she said, "I'm going to take you to a spiritualist church." When they did a documentary on me in the UK, we filmed there. It was wonderful. They were so lovely. Anyway, so I go to this spiritualist church. And I'm 12, and I must have been a right little madam. And everyone, they might have only been in their 30s, which is nothing, but they all were ancient to me. They were all, and it was a dark room. And at the time, it's Kelvedon Road Spiritualist Church. They've moved across the road into a building, but they were in what we call a scout's hut in those days. So it smelt musty. To me, it was like, oh, I don't want to be in here. So my mother, this is typical my mother, she drops me off. She says she's going to stay, and she doesn't stay. So I'm left there with these people in a circle, and I'm thinking, what on earth? So they sit me down, and as I say, and this man, his name was Joseph Benjamin. I'll tell you the story of this. This is incredible. So I don't remember his name, but I'm Mr. Benjamin. My name, and he was a really eminent medium in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in England. So basically, he said, Sally, he was so sweet. And he said, that lady over there, we're in this circle, that lady over there. He said, I gather that you see things in your house. And I went, I don't. And I was like denying it. I thought, I'm hearing, what are they going to say to me if I say yes? I was terrified.
Sure.
And he said, what do you see standing at the back of that lady? Well, with that, these other women, one woman went, oh, I see. I can't remember what she said, but let's, for example, say, oh, I see an old lady there, la, 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 la. And I thought, well, that's not an old lady. That's a man standing there. So I didn't say anything. I thought, I'm going to get told off. My elders, I had such a strict father. Our manners were impeccable. And then, of course, Joseph Benjamin, he said, no, I want Sally to talk. I want Sally to go and show me point where it is. So I went, what, shall I show? So I got up and I went over to this lady who was terrified of me, I have to say. She was like 30, 40, I don't know. My mum was only like, what was my mum then? 21, something ridiculous. And I said, oh, it's a man. I said to the lady sitting there, oh, he's your brother. And she went, my brother's dead. I went, yeah, he's dead. He's there. He's behind you. It was like, that's the beginning of the evening. So,
Did she about have a heart attack when you
well,
said
they
that?
just went silent. I was 12.
Yeah.
I was 12. And I'm only 5 foot now. I was tiny. We were tiny little children. I had hair right down my back that my mother, she would plait, and she'd spit on your hair, and you didn't have the bands you've got now. They were rubber bands she'd bring home from the office. And, you'd have rubber bands all the way down, and she braided our hair. I mean, the designs used to do with that, and ribbons. We had ribbons everywhere in our hair. And I'm like a 12-year-old with long white socks on. And here I am holding a circle, as I now know it's called, in a spiritualist church.
For those who are listening that don't know what a spiritualist church is, please
Well, the
share what that
Spiritualist
is.
church is still they still exist today. It's over
Right?
here, spiritualism is a recognized religion. It's a
Right.
faith system if you want it to be. It's not my faith, but if you want it to be. But it was spiritualism was really it was really started in the late 1800s when it was they had the ectoplasm and all stuff that really I think that they used to pretend, put it like that, table tipping and, touching hands. And spiritualism sort of grew from that. Became a
Uh-huh.
religion. So how they got away with it to make it palatable was you had a church, but the churches weren't churches that were specially built. They were like little huts, like, you could say a cricket hut or like the scout hut, or it might be like the old Nissan huts. Because remember, this is post-war. This is like only maybe 15 years after the Second World War. Do you know what I mean? So there were a
Sure,
lot of
sure.
like places like that that were still there that people opened because they were independently owned. There was the Spiritualist Association of London, which still exists in Kensington. They would belong to that body, but they were owned by because people you put money in, and the person whoever ran it would, have the money, whatever. So it was a religion. Um, but certainly not my mother. She would go, "Oh, we're High Church of England," whatever that meant. But we were church, But she took me there because it was the only place, a vicar or the Catholic religion. You'd be like, oh, be throwing holy water over you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in the Spiritist church, it was like, yes, come in. So let me just tell you, at the end of that evening, this guy, this Joseph Benjamin, I never forget him. He was a little tiny Jewish man. He was gorgeous. And he put his hat, my mother came at last, and I went to, I'm not coming back. She went, how was it? Like, she was like, so flamboyant, Oh, and he went, and he put his hands on my shoulders, and I'll never forget it. He went, she is me. She will do my work. And I looked straight at him. I went, no, I'm going to be a midwife. I always wanted to, from a tiny age. I don't know where my mother never knew where that came from. I always, not a nurse, I want to be a midwife. That's what I always said. And I said, no, I'm going to be a midwife. And he went, no, you will do my work. And he said, you are me. Cut. Go forward 60 years. I'm doing, I used to do a lot of charity, Jewish charity. I'm not Jewish, but the Jewish community love me here in the UK. And I used to do a lot of work for their orphanages in Israel and all over the world. And I was doing this big event. And in those days, a big event for me was 200 people in a hall. And I used to go down off the stage. I can't do that now, but I used to go down off the stage and mingle, and they would, they'd have all their Danish pastries and all of that. And I just used to be polite to them. And I did this big event and they were going crazy. And I came down the stairs and my husband was over the other side of the room and I went, you've got to rescue me. I was being mobbed. And these two little men, they came over, they were like this, and they had little hats on, little trilby hats. And they went, you are Joseph Benjamin. Well, you could have knocked me down with that was like 60 years, never hearing his name, never ever thinking of it. And they went, you are Joseph Benjamin. I went, pardon? And they went, you won't know Joseph Benjamin. I said, I do. They went, you know Joe? You know Joe? I went, well, when I was 12, I met him. They went, what, Joe? What Joe? You know Joe? And they went, you from North London? I went, no, I'm from Fulham, which is right over it's miles and miles away. It's like South London and North London, never the twain shall meet. And he went, you talk like him, you know things like him, you are they said, both of us, before we even said it to one another, we looked and then we said together, Joe Benjamin.
Don't you love that? So when you communicate with spirit, do you have to turn your abilities on and off, or are they always on? Like, you walk in a room and you can see spirits in there, even if you're not trying
Yeah,
to?
but I don't allow myself. Well, if I'm working, then it's like, it's when I tour and I'm touring, I tour the UK every year. And so when I arrive at a theatre or a venue, the I immediately I'm harnessing energy from somewhere. People that and they're people that I don't know. There can be 1,000 people in the audience. I don't know
Right.
any of them, but I'm picking up
Right.
information. So as soon as I walk on, which is really handy that I've got that in my head, will say, uh, like last night, I did a gig last night in Wales, and at some point I walked on and I said, this man was in my head 3 hours ago. Anyway, the person that stood up and, the message resonated with her. I said to her, "What happened 3 hours ago then?" She went, "Oh, 3 hours ago," she said, "My friend was gonna come and she rang up. She's not very well, so we've got another so she said, 3 hours ago, I was telling her about my father who you're just talking about." And I said, "Well, I'm still going because I said, "Well, that's when your father came through 3 hours ago."
Mhm. Mhm. So you go into a theater and there's a big audience there, and the spirits are already going, "Hey, talk to my loved one or talk to my whomever." So how do you do that? Do you just say, "Okay, there's a man here and he's dressed in a blue suit and he looks like this?"
Exactly. I really make, I in the 50 I've been touring now 15 years. It's just like a loop, it's continual. And, I I I deliberately don't impose my ability on anyone. So obviously people are over 18 and they've bought tickets and they've chosen to come, but I do not pick anyone out the audience. I I wait for I call it information. In this line of work, there are certain words that are used that other mediums would say it's that goes with the job. I don't like that language. I have never.
Like what,
So
for
well, like,
example?
they'll after every message they'll say, "Oh, God bless you." Well, I I've got nothing against that. Of course, we love to feel that God is blessing us, but I don't really use the term message because for me, it's information. But I say to them, I get this information and I say, you'll probably know it as a message. That's fair enough, but it's information to me. I am literally, it couldn't be a perfect name, a medium. I am the mouthpiece between their energy that I've harnessed and that energy passing on information to them. And the information on the whole is for validation because at the end of the day, the energy wants their loved ones to know they haven't gone anywhere. And, the only way you're going to know that is, as I say, a little montage goes up first of all. I say, there are hundreds of Marys in the world, but I'm telling you, every single Mary that has passed, has died, it will be unique. There will be a unique aspect to it.
Right.
And I like to feel I can grasp that.
So what are some examples of the information that spirit gives you?
Names and addresses. I get a full address. I will get a full name. I'll get a first name, a middle name, and a surname, or people might call it a family name. I work a lot with names, and I work a lot with I get, and as I'm getting older, um, I find that because and you'll agree with me on it. You develop, you change. I'm not aware of trying to change. I'm not aware of ever trying to um, have a skill set with my work. I've never deliberately thought, "Oh, I need to do that." That sounds.
No, it flows through you. It's spirit communicating through you. You're like a
You see,
translator.
I'll explain the little valve. I feel like there's this little valve. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But basically, I I I like to know exactly how you died because there's gonna be something there,
Right.
because there might be 2 people in the audience that lost Charlie,
Right.
both had heart attacks, but you can bet your life one of them, when he had his heart attack, he might have said, "Mary, help me," and the other one might have just dropped dead. So I want to know, because that also people can, 2 or 3 people can put their hands up and they eliminate. It's really clever, really clever. And I always say I refer to it as a hook from the previous message. So every single message, I build a daisy chain of messages throughout the night. And every single message will have an element of the previous message, which brings in that next message.
So give us an example of that.
I feel like I'm going to make, I mean, I can give you an example, but I don't ever remember what I say to people. But basically, for instance, I had the 2 men, they motorbike accidents. They died on the motorbikes. And so I got the first guy comes in, named Tony. Get everything, hand goes up. And then all of a sudden he says, oh, but he lost like one side of him. And I said, so then another hand goes up and this lady, oh, that's my Tony. He died on a motorbike. La, la, la. But he was cut in half.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
So I've got both Tonys with their motorbikes. Both motorbikes are like a dark bottle green colour.
Right. But then there's a differentiator.
Oh, there'll always be something unique.
Right.
And I want to know that.
When you get that information, is it coming in multiple ways? Are you hearing it telepathically? Are you seeing Tony? You're seeing the green motorbike, obviously.
I have no, I don't feel I manipulate in my head how I'm going to hit. And it's really interesting because I say to the audience, there's a lot of humour in my shows. But I never apologise. My shows are personality led. I can't work unless I can see the humour in life. And they want us to be happy. They don't want to see us crying.
And they're hilarious. Wouldn't you agree? They're hilarious. I agree.
They're hilarious. It's like last night. Listen to this. It's just hysterical, this. I'll change the names. But basically, this lady, I do photographs as well. They come up on the screen. But there's a little QR code and you can send in a photograph of your loved one, or what I refer to as a love letter. You fill it out on screen at the QR, and then my techie boys, they put them up. And this man, his photograph came up. His daughter stood up. And I'm trying to think of his name. What was his name? Anyway, I said, who's Denise? So she went, oh my God, that was his lover. Well, the whole audience. I went, you milk it, because that's my. And I went, I forget his name now. Let's just say his name was Greg. I went, oh, Greg, you've got your lover with. She went, is my mum there? I said, well, I can't see her, but I can see Denise. We were, the whole, you make people feel comfortable then. But listen, it doesn't suit everyone.
I know. People want, when they talk to their loved ones, it's been my experience, they want some profound, earth-shattering, life-changing comment from their loved one.
I say to them, even if it's a simple message, this is coming from an energy where the body isn't here.
Right. But have you found that, though? That they want some, like, life-altering message that's gonna say, okay, you're gonna go get your doctorate and you're gonna save Rwandan children in the bush.
What I get is, oh, she's a comedian, not a medium. Well, I take that as a compliment. That's fantastic. I'm glad that you saw the humour. And then there are messages like last night. I was choked. I was crying my eyes out because we had this really, really awful murder of this young girl, and no one put their hand up. And I said, look, I know. I didn't really go into it, but I said, and it was with a hammer and la 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 la. And then I said, well, all I will say is she's saying Sean. Well, and I've said the real name there. The man stood up. This man he was with his wife, and straight away I knew he'd never been to a show. And I said, have you ever been to a show? No. So I said, oh, what have I said then? That sort of, and he said everything that I'd said. And I said, well, who's Sean? He said, well, that's me. So I said, and he went to college with her. So we're going back. But he had also gone into the room where she was found the following day.
Oh, Lord.
And he said he'd never, I mean, she gave information that, I mean, people were falling out off their chairs. I mean, it was like, I was really upset because I could see her head and it, and I said, it doesn't get any easier for me. When I was like 18, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, when I was that, I'm not saying I was heartless, but I could say to a mum or a dad, "Oh yeah, I've got your son here." Now I think, "Oh, because I've got children and grandchildren."
Yeah. Yeah. How do you find it helps those that are bereaved when you can communicate with their loved ones in spirit?
First of all, you've got to want to communicate. You've got to want to see a medium. It's not for
Mhm.
everyone. And I do think, although I see people that lost someone, they'll come to me, oh, they get in touch and, oh, they lost their mum or their dad yesterday. And then I remember seeing this lady, she was in her 90s and she'd lost her son 70 years before. But I think that it gives, first of all, it stops people, if you've got to be accurate, of course, otherwise they're not going to feel this. But when they know that you're actually picking up something that no one knew, they get a sense of, well, the possibility that our energy resides in a dimension where, when we think of them, because it's all about, I tried to tell them that you must mention their names, you must think of them, you must think of the good times that you had, even if, at the end of the life, it wasn't very nice. Try and think of the good times because they want you to remember those.
Mhm. And they wanna and to your point earlier, we were both agreeing on they're hilarious, and they want the person to be in joy, they don't want them to be grieving, and research shows that people who are in deep grief, when they can communicate with their loved ones, either in a sign or through a medium or themselves in a dream or a vision, it really helps them process their grief.
Oh, definitely. I think that, well, you see, grief is such an unpredictable emotion. It will hit you when you least expect it, when you'll think, "Well, what reminded me of my darling husband? I wasn't talking about him. I'm not anywhere that we used to." And it will just be a sense of that person in spirit. It's almost like a sense of them there. And I think that if you can, and shows, I feel, I love doing my work the way I do at shows because I always say you get to see the beginning, the middle, and the end of a message because messages as well, information as well, it builds. It's not just like, oh yes, I've got your mother here. Her name was Mary. She died. It's not like that. I get shown seed. I get shown exactly how that person passed, what they were doing with their eyes, what they were doing with their hand, the way their head was. And it's like, it's crap what they were wearing. And I always say, uh, I have everything that I'm getting because I don't know you, we've never met. And don't you think it's incredible that I can see your mum as she passed? And they go, can you? I went, well, what I've just said about what she was wearing and what she said, well, did she say, yeah? I said, well, there you go.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So when you get information, I get information, and any medium gets information, how do you think that works?
I think, well, it's energy for a start, you know, and I'm not an academic, but that's good because obviously I think if I was an academic, I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing. I'm doing this because I am literally, I mean, I'm not stupid, but I'm what you might refer to as a simple person who had a very, very humble upbringing and, okay, I work hard and the skills of life are all there. But at the end of the day, I know I do this because of who I am and what I was born into. But I used to say when I was a little girl, because my mother would say, "Well, do you mean you hear? So, and I'd say, oh, well, there's in my brain, I used to say, in my head, and I hadn't even seen a picture of the brain. We didn't have books in my house. We didn't have the money for books. We were poor, 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 poor. But I said, in my brain, there's this, it does a valve that does that. My mother said, what? I said, when it's open, I said, when you have like a deja vu moment, I said, when you think of someone and then the phone, it was only a landline then, the phone rings, and my mother would go, oh, I was just thinking of Pamela and whatever. And I said, your valve's open. And it's like, zzz, a bit of energy. And then it closes naturally. Because we all have this ability. We all have a latent psychic ability. And it can be woken for many reasons. It can be a death of someone close to us, an accident, our health, a trauma. When it's not open naturally, like with me and you, it can be open for other circumstances. But with me, I felt that the valve was open and it never closed. You could look at that and you could think, well, that's odd because everyone else's valve does that. But mine and yours, it's like that all the time. And there's just energy the whole time there.
And then we just translate it when it comes in from the energy into images and thoughts and feelings and
Yeah. And I know all of that. When I say to somebody, I've got, and this is your dad. Didn't your dad have a funny way of talking? This was the other night. And of course, I said, wait a minute. What's you in South Africa for? And he was South African, but spoke like a tribal. He was white, but he spoke a tribal language that was click. So, and she said to me, "Can you hear him?" I went, "Well," and I can't hear him, but I know it. It's bizarre.
yeah, it's telepathic. Yeah.
But then this has only ever happened, I think, maybe no, I don't think it's happened 3 times. My tech guy, Andy, he's been with me since day one, so he's been with me 15 years. And he said it's happened twice. This happened 2 nights ago. At a big show, massive theatre, full up. And I'm giving this message to a lady left of stage, incredible information. And she's standing there, and all of a sudden, I see an outline. It's like, strip lighting that you can get that goes along a cabinet. Well, it was like that, but it was the outline of a person. And it was, yeah. And I screamed and jumped. And then as I jumped, that outline must have been on stage. It dropped down into the orchestra pit. And she saw it and she screamed. And I said, did you just see that? She went, I just saw it. I said, that's your mum. So I actually saw that. The other time was, I was coming on this, I have a break. I do an hour, then we have a 20-minute break and I do another hour. And I was coming on, and as I walked on stage, I thought someone outside a stage, I mean, you don't really get people, but someone on the theatre might have been there, bounced a tennis ball. It was a yellow tennis ball, and it went boom. And I went, as I'm walking on and everyone's cheering, I went, oh, what was that? And a woman right in the front row said, oh, that was a yellow tennis ball. No one else saw it. It wasn't there. But she saw it in the front row.
Right.
Every show that I do, my socks get knocked off. It's like, how I think the moment I'm not like astounded by information that I can harness. It's like harnessing this energy. The moment I don't feel, oh my goodness me, is that when I've got to stop. But I always say that I'll die if I never did another reading, if I never did another show. I'm a medium. I was born to be a medium. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look at all the comfort you've given to so many people, which leads me to, I can't have you on the show without us talking about Princess Diana.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you worked with her
I did.
for several years.
4.5 years. And, this is pretty impossible to take this on board. But I spoke to her, I think, every day for that 4.5 years. Including Christmas Day and Boxing Day and, holidays they were irrelevant to her, you know.
And and obviously, at this stage of the game, it makes me think, okay, well, so she was conversing with her dad's spirit? She was conversing with
Yeah, when I saw her, both her parents had passed. But she, I think everything that has been written and said about her, there's very few things that aren't true. I mean, for instance, she wasn't pregnant when she died, and she wasn't going to marry Dodie. That would never ever have happened. Um, and I don't mean that. I'm not. That's not my opinion. I know that she was never going to marry him, and but everything else, she was troubled. She loved her husband very, very much. She loved who is now our king, and he loved her, but he is from a family and an institution where you marry and you have a mistress. And she was young. What was she, 19 when she married him? And she wanted, everything was hearts and flowers and roses, and she wanted everything to be lovely, and like that was not going to happen. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. And then as far as other things, she was so involved in so many philanthropic
Oh,
things.
she was amazing. She was very, very, she was incredibly polite. She did so much for so many charities. She was what I suppose the easy way to put it, she was touchy-feely. And, up until she came along in the royal family, royalty was very stiff and, standoffish. They were removed because they had to be. They were the monarchy, When I grew up, uh, a little girl, and until I knew her, of course, she came along. The royalty was very, very different.
Because it was stuffier
It's
and it
stuffy. Yeah,
was
that was good. It still is in certain aspects of it. It's still stuffy. There's still, the royal family is an institution. It's a firm. It's a way of life. They are born into it. So it's a bit like, it's a bit like me saying to you, I was born into poverty, but I'm not ashamed of that. But I look at that, that's shaped me for who I am now, and I'm grateful for that. And they're born into, great privilege, and it's difficult for them to change what is expected of them. And she married somebody who was going to be our future king. He's now our king. But, she was going to be our queen.
right, right. And when she did that interview and she said, "I'll just be people's queen of
Yeah.
hearts," do you think that there was a premonition that that really was gonna happen, that she never or that certainly she wasn't gonna be queen, but that
Oh, she knew she
perhaps she
wasn't
wasn't
gonna be
gonna
queen.
live?
She knew she wouldn't be queen. She knew she wouldn't be queen because she knew they would divorce.
But do you think that she knew that she wasn't gonna live much longer?
No, I don't. She never said that to me. I mean, that with anyone with their status, it's like their security is incredible, and they're always worried about their security. And there's no doubt she was concerned about her security. There's no doubt about that.
Mhm, mhm. And then how about her boys?
Oh, they're amazing boys, aren't they? They're incredible.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they've turned what wonderful people they've turned in. I mean, he is so, him and William and Catherine, they're so, I mean, they're like king and queen. They're so royal. I mean,
yes.
what they've done, I feel, which is really clever. They are, they're in their own bubble now. They're in the king and queen bubble to be. There's no doubt about that. And but at the same time, they are both uh, introducing, wanting the king and queen, to be very modern and contemporary, which really you can't really have both. But only people that understand the system will recognize that. You could say, with all due respect, the ordinary person in the street will think that, oh, they're so ordinary now, but they're not. They're not.
Oh, no. Yeah. And how could they
And you'll
be
never be
with
their friend.
all
And anyone that enters, like myself, with a service, like she paid me. She only paid me £35 an hour, which everyone paid me at that time. So you can look, $35 an hour is what I charged her. And but I was a service, and she was incredibly polite, and she was somebody that I spoke to on a regular basis. I never called her anything. I said to her the first couple of times, "What am I going to call you?" And she said, "Well, Diana." I said, "Oh, I can't do that." I said, "I can't do it." And I think she said, "Listen, call me Mary." I said, "Well, I can't do that either." So do you know what? I never said her name.
Did you call her ma'am? But then she was
Whoa.
younger than you
No, no,
probably, or was
no,
she the same
well, I
age?
would even though obviously she was much younger than me, there was total I mean, I am a royalist and brought up in a household that, the royals were everything. I mean, and also I before I saw her, I'd worked a lot with our aristocracy and people that, what you might call highfalutin, that, that was my you could say I ran a practice for 45 years, and I was London's best kept secret, they said.
Yeah, yeah. And how about Harry? We have Harry
I
here.
know, you've got Harry there. I
Yeah,
love Harry.
yeah.
I love
What do
Harry.
you think about him? Do you think that they really is it just that the, um, tabloids are drumming up a lot of nonsense?
Oh, yeah, I think he's always gonna have Harry has got a bee in his bonnet about the tabloids. What we call them red tops, which are like, I don't know what the equivalent is over there. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, they're called
Tabloids, yeah.
tabloids.
I think the tabloid press, I mean, he's fantastic, and Meghan is fantastic fodder for that. Do you know what I mean? They thrive on that. But they'll never, and I've always said this, they will never ever divorce. They will stay together forever. He will never leave her, and he'll never leave his children. He'll never leave Meghan.
Well, do you think that he's going to? I mean, I don't
No,
get that impression
but
that
over here sometimes it's said a lot. I mean, we get different aspects of the press, and they're having marital They're not. They're not.
no. I think he's remarkable.
So do I.
Everything that he's pulled off and the whole Invictus Games
Well, he
thing
has to
and
have something, you see. When they left, he was stripped of all his duties and what he had, because he was, the spare, that the system was giving him, more responsibility, you could say, because he would never be king, you see, because William's gonna be here, so he's never gonna, and he's now down the line in line to the throne anyway. But it basically, so they gave him lots of different things to do, and he had a good status here, but at the same time as being, he was just one of the boys in a lot. And, when I knew his mother, he was like one of the boys, definitely.
mhm. I read that she said that he was the one that she was concerned about because she was afraid that he'd be left behind.
Well, we see what I would say when I used to speak to her, she was more worried about William. Every single week, there wasn't a week that went by that she didn't say to me, "Will William be okay? Will he make a good king?" And she actually said those words. And I was very, very, friendly with her sister Sarah, would come to my house at least 3 times a week for 4.5 years.
Wow. What? Because she was worried about William just because of all the responsibilities being
Responsibility, because
placed.
when they were children, I don't think so much now as men, especially now Harry pulling away, it's almost made William become more assertive. And since he's been with Catherine, like when you're with the right person, you support one another. It's like scaffolding, isn't it? But before, when he was a boy, William was the shyer one. Harry was always the one out there, like, and Harry was always the one smiling at the press or doing something that he shouldn't do. William, from the get-go, because William, from the moment he was born, was going to be our king one day. They're treated differently,
Right,
completely
right.
differently.
Yeah. And that Catherine, boy, was she born for the job? My
Oh, I
goodness.
mean, as I said, she's like the queen. She's like the queen. She's queenly, which is wonderful because we need that. William needs her. William needs that. He could never have had anyone that wasn't born to take on that role. I mean, she
Mhm,
now is that role. She no
mhm.
longer's trying. She is that person, which is wonderful for him. They'll make a
Mhm.
wonderful king and queen one day.
Do you think her health will hold out?
Yeah, I think that they caught that early,
Okay,
thank God.
good, good. All right, couple more questions as we're winding down. I could talk to you all day. You started a psychic hotline, basically, a call-in online, service for people who wanna talk to psychics and mediums. Tell us about that.
I would join it. So, well, they're just basically, I've got a team of people that are handpicked by me, because I've got to really feel that they can, do what they say they can do. That's you got to come up with the goods because, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't like this, but I know you're going to agree with me with this, Julie. Our work, it hinges on accuracy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and honesty and integrity.
Well, yeah, but I think you see, I couldn't do my work at the level I do it, which is basically touring and everything else that I do. We're very, very, I'm very particular, and so is my daughter, what I do say yes to. Um, but I couldn't do that unless that came naturally because people they're not silly, are they? They can tell, can't they?
Right, they can tell. I agree.
When I'm doing my schools, when I'm doing my workshops, I will say to when we're doing them, when I'm in front of other mediums and psychics, it takes courage to differentiate between a clairvoyant psychic and medium. Very few people that in this work want to say, I am a medium, because when you say you're a medium, you are immediately recognizing and saying to someone, yeah, there's an energy, the body's not here, but the energy of that person is, and I'm picking that up. And that's where people would rather go, well, I'm a psychic, I can look at a card and I can pick it up well, yeah, and I'm a psychic medium. No, you are either a psychic, clairvoyant, clear view, clairvoyant to see, which is fair enough, which we all can. We can all be clairvoyants, all of us. Not all of us want to look at it, but we've all got that ability. But to actually say, I am a medium takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage.
Huh, I never thought of it that way. I call myself a buffet of psychicness.
Well, that's it.
You know,
I think that
once you connect
yeah,
with spirit, you can do it
well,
all. What it doesn't
absolutely,
matter.
you can. You see, that because you and I know that we are genuine and we do connect. Other people that profess to, there are a lot of them out there that don't connect. They'd they'd die if they connected like you and I do.
Do I have a heart attack? Like, oh my
Well, yeah,
God,
I'll
what's
do
gonna
that every
happen
single
now?
night. It's like a bit like, and I say to the audience, why am I surprised? This is what I'm saying. I do.
I know.
You're totally surprised by it all.
Right.
It's crazy.
But it's such a joy and it's such an honor and it's
It
so
is.
much fun.
An easy
Yeah.
honor.
And obviously, you love it or you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Last question. Why do we incarnate?
We reincarnate, I think, for very, almost you could say, reasons that are to do with our personality. I think that, and it's what we make of it. If we are lucky enough to be that miracle and be born to that mother, then it's like, you got to make what you've got to make of it.
Right.
It's not, what do you say to people, just throwing something back at you, because I get asked this a lot, where do you think hell is?
I don't think it exists. I think we create our own hell. I don't think anybody gets dropped off in a burning pit. I think one of my favorite quotes is George Lucas from the Star Wars. George Lucas, the force be with you and all of that. And he said, we all live in cages with the door open. So, meaning, we can stay in a cage, which is our own hell, or we can leave the cage and it's all up to us. Yeah, all spirits go to heaven is what I
Yeah,
see.
I think that when you look at people that do atrocities here, which unfortunately there are individuals that do that or cause that, and then people say, where do they go? Because, my husband was so good, they'll say, or my mother was so wonderful. What happens to, if someone is murdered? And I always say, well, sometimes I think that, like I said, I felt my husband got permission to come back. I think that sometimes they just have to wait until they get into that or if they're going to get into that divine space. I just feel that there is earth plane, spirit world, and divinity, where you could say, if you wanted to, we give it the name God, which, each to their own belief system. But I can't get my head around, and this is me not being academic, all different levels. And so I think that not everyone will go to divinity, not even maybe people that have been the Pope or people that have been, like Mother Teresa, not everyone will get there, but all of us go to spirit world.
You are as fabulous as I knew you would be. How can people learn more about you and your
Well,
work?
I think my website, really, go onto the website, sallymorgan.tv, simple as that, sallymorgan.tv. Just get on the website. Everything's on there, and all the social media. I mean, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. I'm just looking. I'm just trying all the ones. We're just about to start a YouTube. I've got YouTube, but we're just about to start the YouTube channel properly. So and I'm just about to do shows online. Where I'm like on stage, where we're going to have like 3, 5, 1,000 people up on the screens, which is lovely.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, we're going to have you back because I have 3 pages of questions we didn't get to. So,
It's so lovely.
all right.
It's so lovely to talk to you and to have met
You
you.
too.
To hook up with another medium who has such a similar idea and view about their work. It's very unusual, so it's wonderful for me. It's taken all these years for me to find you.
My honor, my honor. In the meantime, everybody, sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from London too, where Sally is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends.